What if I tell you that the iconic image of a cowboy galloping across sun-drenched plains often hides a much colder, quieter reality? Tonight, we'll trade the dramatic sunsets for the bite of icy winds and the roaring campfires for the gentle creak of a frozen saddle. As we truly settle into the solitary, enduring life of an 1880s Montana cowboy, the air bites with a keen, dry chill, and a thin layer of hoarfrost glitters on the sparse winter grass. The valleys stretch for miles, often winding between low, snow-covered hills. The cattle, hardy longhorns, move slowly, their shaggy coats dusted with frost. You carry strips of dried jerky, tough and salty, which you chew slowly, extracting every bit of protein. A tin cup of coffee, brewed over a meager sagebrush fire, is a precious luxury, its warmth briefly spreading through your chilled hands and down your throat. The taste is bitter, often smoky, but utterly vital. There are no fresh fruits or vegetables for weeks on end, only the basic provisions that can withstand long journeys and harsh conditions. The smell of wood smoke clinging to your clothes is a familiar, comforting scent. You ride alongside them, your horse's hooves crunching softly on the frozen ground. The repetitive sound of their lowing, the creak of your saddle, and the steady beat of your horse's hooves are the constant companions of your days. The sun, though bright, offers little warmth, and the wind, when it picks up, carries with it an unrelenting bite that seems to penetrate every layer of your clothing. The sky above is a vast, unblemished blue, but the distant mountains are already dusted with snow, promising colder days to come. You clench and unclench them, trying to coax feeling back, but the sensation is often dull and distant. Your nose might ache, and the tips of your ears tingle with a persistent chill. You learn to move your body in subtle ways to generate warmth, shifting in the saddle, rubbing your hands together, but the cold is a battle you are always fighting. The taste of the air is crisp, almost metallic, and when you take a deep breath, it stings your lungs. You are a cowboy, a solitary figure on horseback, your breath misting in the frigid air as you survey the herd. Imagine yourself standing on the open range of Montana in the 1880s. Your primary task, day in and day out, is herding cattle through icy valleys. The sheer scale of the landscape is humbling. The cold is a constant, tangible presence. Your fingers, despite thick leather gloves, quickly grow numb from frost. Meals are simple, functional affairs designed for sustenance on the move. When night falls, the cold intensifies, and the stars appear with an astonishing clarity in the vast, unpolluted sky. Sleep, when it comes, is often fitful. You typically sleep in a drafty bunkhouse, a rough-hewn structure of logs or planks, often with chinks in the walls that allow the wind to whistle through. The whisper of snow as your horse pushes through a drift, the faint crackle of ice underfoot, the way the light reflects off a pristine blanket of white, creating an almost blinding glare. You learn to read the subtle signs of the weather, the gathering clouds, the sudden drop in temperature, the shifting wind, for your very survival depends on it. A sudden snowstorm can engulf the landscape in minutes, disorienting both man and beast, leading to frostbite, starvation, and death. It is a life shaped by the raw power of the land, by relentless cold, and by the constant vigilance required for survival. It is a solitary existence marked by endurance and a quiet determination far removed from the comforts of a settled world. You envision the swirling white, the howling wind, the loss of all visibility, and the desperate struggle to keep the herd from scattering. Another, more human, fear is that of rustlers. Bands of outlaws roam the range, preying on isolated herds. The threat of violence, of a sudden confrontation in the vast emptiness, is a palpable tension that you carry with you. Always aware of your surroundings, your hand never far from the worn grip of your revolver. The air inside is still frigid, and the thin blankets offer only a meager defense against the biting cold. Days merge into weeks, marked by the rising and setting of the sun, the slow progress of the herd, and the endless miles beneath your horse's hooves. Your muscles ache with a persistent, dull throb, and your mind often drifts into a quiet, almost meditative state born of repetitive motion and constant vigilance. You pull your hat low, burrow into your bedroll, and try to ignore the constant shiver that runs through your body. The sounds are simple: the groan of settling timber, the distant howl of a coyote, or the soft breathing of your fellow cowboys. The ground beneath you is hard, and the exhaustion of the day's ride pulls at your muscles, sometimes making it difficult to find a comfortable position. The sensory chill of snowy trails is an ever-present reality. The exhaustion of long drives becomes a deeply ingrained feeling. Beneath this physical toll, there is also a constant, quiet fear. The frontier is a place of unpredictable dangers. The most immediate is the blizzard. This is the quiet, challenging rhythm of life as a Montana cowboy. As the quiet echoes of a cowboy's grueling daily life fade into the vast Montana night, let us now turn our gaze to a figure whose ambition and resolve helped to shape this formidable landscape, Granville Stewart, known reverently as Mr. Montana Stewart. As story is one deeply intertwined with the development of the territory in the latter half of the 19th century, particularly during the turbulent 1880s, a period that saw the dramatic expansion of the cattle industry. Imagine a man of quiet determination, his face weathered by sun and wind, his eyes holding the steady gaze of someone who has seen much and overcome more. Granville Stewart arrived in Montana early in the 1850s, drawn by the allure of gold. Picture the seemingly endless sea of grass, perfect for grazing thousands upon thousands of cattle. This was a grand vision, a gamble on the sheer scale of the land. But this ambition came with immense challenges. They would take matters into their own hands. This led to what became known as the Stewart Stranglers, or the Vigilante Committees of 1884. Imagine the hushed conversations around campfires, the quiet, somber resolve as men, pushed to their limits, decided to enforce their own form of justice. This was not a cheerful undertaking, but a perceived necessity born of desperation. The actions of these vigilantes were swift and uncompromising. They hunted down suspected rustlers, holding impromptu trials, and often carrying out summary executions. But his destiny, and ultimately his lasting impact, lay not in the shimmering dust of the placer mines, but in the boundless potential of the open range. He was among the very first to truly grasp the potential for cattle ranching in the vast, seemingly empty spaces of Montana. Stewart, along with his brothers, established one of the territory's earliest and most successful cattle operations, the DHS Ranch in the Judith Basin. The most insidious threat to the burgeoning cattle empires was the scourge of rustlers. These were not merely petty thieves. They were often organized gangs, preying on the isolated herds, rebranding stolen cattle, and driving them to distant markets. Their actions threatened the very foundation of the ranching industry, undermining property rights and challenging the fragile order of the frontier. For ranchers like Stewart, these rustlers represented a direct assault on their livelihoods and the fruits of their years of tireless effort. Faced with this growing threat, and with law enforcement often sparse or ineffective in the sprawling territory, Stewart, along with other prominent ranchers, made a grand decision. This period was brutal, a harsh chapter in Montana's history. While controversial today, at the time, many believed it was the only way to establish a semblance of order and protect the nascent industry. Stewart's involvement solidified his reputation as a man who would do what was necessary, a formidable figure in a land that demanded resilience. His struggle against rustlers, while employing methods that are unsettling to modern sensibilities, contributed to the eventual establishment of more formal law and order on the frontier. His experiences with the brutal winters highlighted the inherent risks and led to innovations in ranching. He wasn't just a rancher. He was a chronicler, a diarist, and later a diplomat, providing invaluable insights into the early history of the territory. His unwavering commitment to the protection of his property and the future of ranching shaped the perception of him as a stern, unyielding, but ultimately vital force for order in a chaotic land. Beyond the human element, Granville Stewart also contended with the brutal, unpredictable forces of nature, particularly the harsh Montana winters. The hard winter of 1886 to 87 stands out as a devastating blow to the open-range cattle industry. Imagine the relentless cold, the blizzards that buried the land under feet of snow, the temperatures plummeting far below zero. Cattle, left to fend for themselves on the open range, succumbed by the thousands. The sheer scale of the loss was catastrophic, wiping out entire fortunes and forcing a fundamental shift in ranching practices, moving away from entirely open, grazing towards more managed approaches. Stewart, despite his foresight and hardiness, suffered immense losses during this period, a testament to the raw power of the land he sought to tame. Granville Stewart's legacy is complex but undeniable. He was a pioneer who helped lay the groundwork for Montana's primary industry. His tale is one of survival, ambition, and the relentless pursuit of an empire in a wild land. It's a story of power not just over men, but over the forces of nature, all delivered to you now in a soothing tone, inviting you to contemplate the quiet yet profound impact of individuals on the vast canvas of history. As the echoes of Granville Stewart's determined struggle against rustlers and blizzards gently fade, let us now embark on a quiet journey to places where time seems to have paused, where the whispers of the past are carried on the wind through empty windows and creaking doors. Before you stands a cluster of weathered wooden buildings, a saloon, a general store, a hotel, perhaps even a gallows, all standing as spectral sentinels to a bygone era. Bannack, in particular, was Montana's first territorial capital, a place of intense activity where prospectors, cowboys, merchants, and outlaws mingled in a raw, untamed environment. Picture the sounds that once filled these streets, the clatter of horses' hooves, the raucous laughter from saloons, the clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the urgent shouts of men. Now, only the wind provides a soundtrack. These are not merely abandoned structures. They are frozen moments in time, leaving us to ponder the quiet mysteries of why their vibrant life suddenly drained away. We are speaking, of course, of the ghost towns of Montana, enigmatic remnants of a frontier boom, places like the famously preserved town of Bannack. Imagine a landscape where silence reigns, broken only by the rustle of dry grass or the distant call of a hawk. Many of these towns, including Bannack, began as bustling cowboy camps or mining settlements, springing up almost overnight wherever gold was discovered or where cattle ranches needed central hubs. The central enigma of these ghost towns is their abandonment. Why did the life force drain from them? Was it simply that the gold ran out, or were there other, more complex factors at play? For many, the answer lies in the harsh economic realities of the frontier. Were they indeed abandoned due to failed ranches, depleted mines, or the volatile nature of a boom and bust economy? Consider the specific case of mining towns. The initial discovery of gold or silver would draw thousands, creating a flurry of activity and rapid construction. But mines eventually played out. The rich veins of ore dwindled, making extraction unprofitable. The brutal winters we discussed earlier, such as the catastrophic winter of 1886 to 87, devastated herds and ruined ranchers, forcing them to abandon their operations. Imagine the quiet, methodical work of archaeologists sifting through layers of dust and debris. They might uncover rusted tools, broken pottery shards, discarded bottles, and remnants of clothing. They are monuments to human ambition, resilience, and ultimately, the impermanence of even the most fervent dreams. We are not seeking grand revelations, but rather allowing the stillness of these abandoned places to work its hypnotic effect, drawing our minds into a deeper understanding of the ebb and flow of human endeavor on a vast and untamed frontier. They spark curiosity about the fading West, inviting us to ponder the countless untold stories locked within their decaying walls. Who were the men and women who lived here? What were their hopes, their fears, their daily routines? Each artifact, no matter how small, tells a story. A worn boot, a bent spoon, a child's toy. These mundane objects speak volumes about the daily struggles, the small comforts, and the aspirations of the people who once called these places home. These finds allow us to piece together the routines of frontier life, the items they valued, and the challenges they faced. Changes in cattle prices, overgrazing leading to barren land, or the extension of railroads that bypass certain areas could also lead to economic decline and eventual desertion. We see evidence of community formation, even in the most remote outposts, the remnants of a church, a schoolhouse, a Masonic lodge. These structures suggest that even in the pursuit of wealth and in the face of harsh conditions, people sought to recreate familiar social structures and find solace in collective identity. The saloon, often the most prominent building, speaks to the social hub it once was, a place for camaraderie, entertainment, and sometimes conflict. When the source of wealth dried up, the people who had come seeking fortune simply packed what they could and moved on, leaving their hastily built settlements to the mercy of the elements. For towns tied to the cattle industry, like some of the smaller outposts, failure could stem from different sources. Delving into archaeological finds within these ghost towns offers tantalizing clues about the lives once lived here. Exploring the cultural practices around frontier life within these abandoned settlements provides further insight. The silence that now envelops these towns allows for a different kind of contemplation. This segment invites a quiet reflection, a gentle journey into the heart of disappearance. Having wandered through the desolate beauty of Montana's ghost towns, where the echoes of hardship and ambition still linger, let us now transition, with a measured pace, to a different facet of the frontier experience, the rugged luxury of a Montana cattle king's lodge. Imagine yourself stepping out of the biting wind of the open range and into a place of warmth, substance, and quiet power, perhaps in the late 1880s, when the great cattle empires were at their zenith. This is not the drafty bunkhouse of the working cowboy. This is a formidable log lodge built to withstand the harshest winters and to project an image of success and permanence. The cattle king's day might begin with a substantial breakfast prepared by a cook rather than a hurried bite of jerky. His mornings might be spent in a comfortable study, surrounded by books, maps, and ledgers, overseeing the vast operations of his ranch. The floor might be covered with thick, plush fur rugs, perhaps from bear or bison, providing a deep, soft cushion underfoot and adding to the rustic opulence. Heavy, handcrafted wooden furniture, upholstered in durable leather, would invite repose. Mounted trophies of elk, deer, and perhaps even a grizzly bear would adorn the walls, silent testaments to the king's prowess as a hunter and his dominion over the wild lands. Picture massive, hand-hewn logs forming the walls, their rough texture softened by years of careful tending. As you step inside, the immediate sensation is one of enveloping warmth, perhaps from a roaring stone fireplace that dominates one end of a grand hall. The air carries the subtle, comforting scent of pine and wood smoke, mingled with the aroma of rich leather. Above your head, grand antler chandeliers cast a soft, flickering light, their intricate branches holding dozens of oil lamps or candles illuminating the spacious room. Life within these lodges, even in the heart of the wilderness, was a stark contrast to the cowboy's arduous existence. And the feasts held within these walls were legendary. Imagine a long, polished dining table laden with an abundance of frontier delicacies. The rich, savory aroma of roasted elk or venison would fill the air, a hearty main course. Alongside it, perhaps wild game birds, fresh vegetables from a sheltered garden, and breads baked in a stone oven. And, of course, flowing whiskey, the quintessential drink of the frontier, served in heavy tumblers, its warmth spreading slowly through the system. These were not just meals. They were declarations of wealth and influence, opportunities to entertain important guests, consolidate power, and celebrate success. The sounds would be convivial, the clinking of glasses, the murmur of conversation, perhaps the deep laughter of men who had achieved great things. Beyond the domestic comforts, the Cattle King's Lodge was often a hub of negotiations with miners and other entrepreneurs. The Montana frontier was a dynamic place where cattle empires often overlapped with mining interests. The king might host mining magnates, railroad tycoons, or land speculators, discussing contracts, rights of way, and the future development of the territory. These were quiet battles of wits where fortunes could be made or lost with a handshake and a few carefully chosen words. The cattle king, with his vast land holdings and economic power, held significant sway in these discussions. The cattle king's role in territorial politics was often profound and far-reaching. These men, with their substantial wealth and influence, were not merely ranchers. They were de facto leaders in a sparsely populated, rapidly developing territory. While the cowboy endured frostbitten fingers and slept in a drafty bunkhouse, the king enjoyed the warmth of a roaring fire, fine food, and comfortable surroundings. The cowboy's daily life was a relentless physical struggle. The king's was a strategic game of economics and politics. This disparity highlights Montana's elite, showcasing the vast chasm between those who toiled on the land and those who commanded its resources from a position of rugged luxury. It's a testament to the powerful allure of the American West, where immense fortunes could be forged, creating lives of opulence, even in the heart of a harsh, untamed land. Allow your mind to gently absorb these images of comfort and command as we contemplate the nuanced layers of life on the Montana frontier. They lobbied for favorable laws, influenced appointments, and often held political offices themselves. Their decisions made within the walls of these lodges affected everything from land use and water rights to the establishment of law enforcement and infrastructure development. They were instrumental in shaping Montana from a wild frontier into a more organized, albeit still rugged, state. This offers a vivid contrast to the cowboy's hardship we explored earlier. As we move from the rugged comforts of the Cattle King's Lodge, let us now delve into a more unsettling yet equally defining aspect of the Montana frontier, the often brutal reality of frontier justice personified by the rise of vigilante groups, particularly the Yellowstone vigilantes in the early 1880s. This period highlights the raw, sometimes violent, means by which order was sought in a land where formal law enforcement was thin on the ground. Imagine a vast, sparsely populated territory where distances were immense and settlements isolated. In this environment, the lines between right and wrong, between victim and aggressor, could become blurred. A man accused, perhaps tied to a tree or led to an impromptu gallows fashioned from a sturdy beam. The air would be thick with tension, the only sounds the rustle of clothing, the creak of rope, and the strained breathing of those assembled. The purpose was clear: to instill fear, to deter further crime, and to restore a brutal semblance of order. The bodies were often left as stark warnings, grim markers on the landscape. The phrase, hanged for horse stealing, or shot for rustling, became a chilling epitaph, a stark testament to the unforgiving nature of frontier justice. The legal system, with its distinct courts and limited sheriffs, often struggled to keep pace with the rapid influx of people. Some honest, many opportunistic, and a significant number outright criminal. This vacuum of official authority created a fertile ground for self-appointed groups to emerge. promising to deliver the swift justice that the formal system often could not. The Yellowstone vigilantes, active primarily in the central and eastern parts of Montana Territory, were one such group. Their rise was a direct response to a perceived surge in lawlessness, cattle rustling, horse theft, stagecoach robberies, and outright murder. Picture the frustration and fear among honest ranchers and citizens who saw their livelihoods threatened and their lives endangered. The quiet hum of daily life was often punctuated by tales of banditry and violence, fostering a pervasive sense of insecurity. The actions of these vigilantes were not discreet or subtle. They operated with a stark, often chilling efficiency. Suspected criminals, once apprehended, were rarely given the benefit of a formal trial. Instead, they faced immediate judgment by the vigilante committee, often in hastily convened meetings under the vast open sky or within the confines of a rudimentary cabin. The evidence was often circumstantial, based on reputation or direct accusation. The executions were swift and summary. Imagine the quiet solemnity, yet underlying dread of such an event. While these actions brought a crude form of order, they were undeniably controversial and remain so in historical memory. Many of the vigilantes were respectable citizens, driven by a desperate need for security. It speaks to a deeply ingrained belief among many pioneers that self-reliance and direct action were necessary for survival in a harsh environment. The story of the Yellowstone vigilantes is a testament to the raw, unpolished nature of the frontier, a place where the rule of law was often forged not in courtrooms, but in the unforgiving crucible of necessity. However, the lack of due process, the potential for mistaken identity, personal vendettas, or the settling of scores meant that innocent individuals could, and sometimes did, become victims. The thin line between justice and vengeance was often blurred. This period was a stark, sometimes brutal, chapter in the development of Montana, illuminating the desperate measures sometimes taken to establish social control where formal institutions were weak. As we contemplate these stark realities, let us do so with a calm, detached perspective, acknowledging the harshness of the past without dwelling on explicit details. This segment offers a quiet reflection on the difficult choices faced by those who sought to build a society in the wilderness and the profound, sometimes unsettling ways in which justice was dispensed when the institutions of order were still in their infancy. As the stark images of frontier justice and the challenges of the open range begin to recede, let us now turn our attention to an agent of immense change, a force that would irrevocably alter the very fabric of Montana, connecting its vast, isolated expanses to the rest of the nation: the Great Northern Railway. Its westward push in the late 19th century was not merely an engineering feat. It was a catalyst for unprecedented economic and social transformation. Hill's philosophy was not merely to build a railroad, but to develop the territory it served. He understood that a railroad's success depended on the prosperity of the communities along its route. This meant actively promoting settlement, encouraging agriculture, and facilitating the extraction of Montana's vast natural resources. Imagine the immense scale of the undertaking. Thousands of laborers working through the brutal Montana winters and scorching summers, laying track across mountains, prairies, and rivers. The rhythmic clanging of hammers striking spikes, the hiss of steam locomotives, and the shouts of work crews would have replaced the quiet solitude of the plains in these construction zones. This was a symphony of industrial progress, slowly but surely weaving a still thread across the vastness. The Great Northern Railway, largely the vision of its shrewd and determined president, James J. Hill, was unique among the transcontinental lines. The impact on Montana's economy was immediate and profound. Before the railroad, transporting goods, be it cattle, timber, or minerals, was a slow, arduous, and costly endeavor. Suddenly, Montana's products could reach distant markets in the east with unprecedented speed and efficiency. Imagine the long cattle drives, now replaced by train cars filled with livestock. The copper and silver from Butts mines, once constrained by transport costs, could now be shipped across the country, fueling the nation's industrial growth. Agriculture, too, was revolutionized. Farmers could now reliably ship their wheat and other crops, transforming vast tracts of prairie into productive farmland. The railroad itself also created new jobs and industries, from maintenance crews to station agents to the burgeoning businesses that sprang up around the new rail depots. Beyond the economy, the Great Northern had an equally significant social impact. It facilitated an immense wave of settlement. Prior to the railroad, homesteaders faced immense challenges reaching the interior of Montana. The train offered a quicker, safer, and more affordable passage. Imagine families arriving at newly established towns along the rail lines, carrying their few possessions, their faces alight with hope for a new life. Towns that were once tiny outposts just swelled into bustling communities, sometimes almost overnight. It was a place where life was lived on the edge, yet it fostered a unique spirit of resilience and self-reliance. The challenges faced by its inhabitants, the triumphs they achieved, and the quiet mysteries they left behind all contribute to a rich tapestry that continues to fascinate. Ethnic enclaves formed as immigrants from Europe and other parts of the United States sought opportunities in this new frontier. The population of Montana exploded, bringing with it a greater diversity of cultures, skills, and perspectives. Furthermore, the railroad brought the outside world closer. Newspapers, mail, manufactured goods, and even cultural influences flowed into Montana with greater ease. This began the slow process of integrating Montana into the broader American society, breaking down its isolation and diminishing its raw frontier character. The vast, untamed wilderness, once accessible only to the hardiest pioneers, was now being traversed by steel rails and steam engines, opening it up to development and changing its very essence. This period of transformation marked a significant departure from the solitary cowboy lifestyle and the raw vigilante justice that defined earlier eras. While challenges remained, the railroad brought a new sense of order, connectivity, and opportunity. The quiet rumble of a distant train, even now, can evoke a sense of journey and transformation. This segment gently brings us to the close of our historical journey, leaving us with a sense of Montana's evolution from a wild frontier to a land increasingly connected and developed. The landscape, once solely dominated by natural forces, now bore the indelible mark of human ingenuity and ambition on an unprecedented scale. As we contemplate the powerful engine of progress that was the Great Northern Railway, allow your mind to gently consider how technology can reshape entire regions, drawing people together and creating new possibilities. Montana, in the late 19th century, was a crucible of human endurance, ambition, and adaptation. What if the most dangerous secret you held wasn't a state affair, but a stolen kiss? Tonight, we journey back to Minoan Crete, to walk in the sandals of someone whose heart yearned for what was forbidden within walls that saw everything and spoke of nothing. Imagine yourself in the heart of Knossos, not as a grand ruler or a celebrated artist, but as a servant in the bustling palace. Sometime around the 17th century BCE, the sun has barely begun to warm the eastern sky, but the palace is already stirring. You've spent hours scrubbing the intricate mosaic floors, the patterns of marine life and geometric designs slowly emerging from beneath layers of grime. The rough texture of the pumice stone against your palms is a familiar sensation, a constant reminder of your place within this grand structure. The palace itself feels alive, a colossal, multi-storied labyrinth of rooms and corridors. Not just with the scent of fresh plaster and polished wood, but with the heady aroma of saffron. used not only in cooking but also as a dye for the vibrant textiles that adorn the palace, and perhaps even as a subtle cosmetic. You might catch the faintest whiff of a sweet floral essence as a lady of the court sweeps past, her robes rustling softly, her movements graceful and unhurried. The visual landscape is equally rich, even for a servant. The walls are not bare stone, but alive with frescoes, depicting scenes of vibrant nature, athletic bull leaping, and serene processions. You pass them daily, perhaps not truly seeing them, yet their colors, the deep reds, the vivid blues, the sun-drenched yellows, are absorbed by your eyes, becoming part of the unconscious backdrop of your existence. The sounds are a constant hum, the soft slap of sandaled feet on stone, the distant clatter of pottery, the low murmur of voices from unseen chambers, and the occasional sharp cry of a market vendor from beyond the palace walls. A faint light filters through the narrow windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, thick with the scent of wood smoke from the kitchen fires and the subtle sweetness of olive oil. Your feet, accustomed to the cool stone, already ache slightly from the morning's chores. Your meals are simple, yet nourishing. A small bowl of barley porridge, perhaps a handful of briny olives, and a piece of flatbread baked fresh on the hearth. You eat quickly, often while still working, perched on a low stool in a communal area, the earthy taste of the grains filling your mouth. You overhear them, fragments of hushed conversations carried on the gentle breeze through open doorways, or exchanged in low tones in dimly lit corridors. A servant girl, perhaps, speaking of clandestine meetings in the olive groves outside the palace walls. A guard, his face flushed, murmuring about a noblewoman's late-night excursions. These are the threads of forbiddance liaisons woven subtly into the fabric of daily life. Life here is structured by the rhythm of the palace, a relentless cycle of duties that ebb and flow with the sun. You carry water in heavy clay amphorae from the palace wells, the cool liquid sloshing gently against the sides. You sweep courtyards, polish bronze vessels until they gleam, and attend to the needs of the more privileged inhabitants. And it is in this environment, amidst the ceaseless activity, that the whispers begin. The air itself, particularly grander chambers, is often perfumed. But beneath the surface of this daily routine, for you, there is a secret, a quiet tremor of fear. You are not merely an observer of these whispered scandals. You are perhaps caught within one yourself. In a society where status and order are paramount, such illicit connections could have dire consequences. The consequences could range from public humiliation and banishment from the palace to harsher, more severe punishments that are rarely spoken of but are understood. Each whispered word, each secret glance, carries with it the tangible weight of risk. You move with a practiced caution, your eyes scanning, your ears always attuned to the subtle shifts in the palace's rhythm. The rhythm of your own life, therefore, is not merely dictated by your chores, but also by the intricate dance of concealment, of protecting a secret that holds both immense joy and profound apprehension. This constant, quiet vigilance becomes a part of who you are, a silent tension that underlies the outward calm of your daily duties within the vibrant yet watchful walls of Knossos. The stolen glances across a crowded hall, the fleeting touch of hands as you pass in a narrow corridor, the hushed words exchanged when you believe no one is listening, the simple act of brushing against the person you desire, the faint scent of their skin, the quiet beat of your own heart. These are the subtle markers of your dangerous entanglement. The fear of discovery is a constant companion, a faint echo in the back of your mind. Now, as the gentle Aegean breeze continues to whisper through the ancient olive groves of Crete, let us turn our attention from the intimate struggles of a palace servant to a tale that transcends the mundane, a story that has echoed through the centuries and become one of the most enduring myths of the Minoan age. The Sipau, the consort of the powerful King Minos, would have moved with an air of quiet authority, adorned in the rich, flowing robes favored by the Minoan elite, her hair intricately styled. Yet beneath this veneer of queenly composure, myth tells us of a tumultuous inner world, a passion that would ultimately lead to a legendary and infamous affair. We speak now of Queen Pasiphae, a figure whose name is synonymous with both beauty and scandal, a pivotal character in the unfolding drama of Minoan legend. Dating back to perhaps 1600 BC, imagine the grand halls of Knossos, not from the perspective of a servant, but through the eyes of its regal inhabitants. The story, as it has been passed down through generations, begins with King Minos and his divine right to rule. To solidify his claim, Minos prayed to Poseidon, the god of the sea, asking for a sign. Poseidon, in his oceanic majesty, sent forth a magnificent white bull from the waves, a creature of breathtaking beauty and formidable power. Minos was meant to sacrifice this bull to the god, a testament to his piety and a fulfillment of his vow. However, overwhelmed by the bull's splendor, Minos, perhaps swayed by arrogance or simple covetousness, chose to keep the magnificent beast for himself, substituting a lesser bull for the sacrifice. It was this act of hubris that, according to the myth, incurred the wrath of Poseidon. The sea god, in his divine fury, chose a truly insidious form of retribution. He caused Pasiphae, the queen, to fall victim to an unnatural and overwhelming desire for the very bull her husband had refused to sacrifice. Imagine the bewilderment, the profound internal conflict that must have gripped the queen. A passion undeniable and consuming for a creature of immense power and beauty, yet fundamentally non-human. This was not a subtle infatuation, but a profound and unsettling urge that defied all social norms and royal expectations. The myth describes her as utterly consumed by this forbidden love, to the extent that she sought the assistance of the brilliant artisan Daedalus. Daedalus, a figure of extraordinary ingenuity in Greek mythology, was tasked by Pasiphae to construct a device that would allow her to satisfy her unnatural longing. He fashioned a hollow wooden cow, so cunningly crafted that it appeared indistinguishable from a living bovine, allowing Pasiphae to conceal herself within it and interact with the bull. While the true details of such an event would be shrouded in secrecy and whispered only in the deepest confines of the palace, the very existence of the Minotaur, a terrifying creature eventually confined within the famous labyrinth, would have been a palpable source of fear and shame for the royal family. The myth speaks to a societal fear of the unnatural, of desires that defy order, and the potentially chaotic consequences when divine will is defied. The outcome of this bizarre and tragic union was the Minotaur, a creature with the body of a man and the head of a bull, a monstrous embodiment of the queen, a transgression and Poseidon's curse. The court's reaction to such a scandal, even if only a myth, would have been one of profound shock and horror. We are not meant to be agitated by the passions of ancient queens, but rather to contemplate the power of storytelling, the enduring nature of human desire, and how these ancient tales, even those born of fantasy, can illuminate the perceived boundaries of their time. The myth of Pasiphae reminds us that even in the serene and artistic world of the Minoans, there were undercurrents of wildness, of passions that transcended the ordinary, leaving behind a legacy that continues to intrigue us thousands of years later. The cultural impact of this myth on Minoan society, or at least its later interpretations by the Greeks, is profound. The tale of Pasiphae and the Minotaur became a cornerstone of Greek mythology, inextricably linked with the island of Crete and its labyrinthine palace. It served as a cautionary tale, a dramatic narrative exploring themes of forbidden desire, divine retribution, and the blurred lines between humanity and the monstrous. While the Minoans themselves may have had their own interpretations and rituals surrounding bulls, the Greek mythologizing of Pasiphae's affair added a layer of scandal and tragedy that resonated for centuries. This narrative of myth and scandal, though deeply gripping, is delivered to us now in a soothing tone. As the echoes of Pesipau's mythical passion gently recede, let us now shift our focus from the grand narratives of queens and gods to something much smaller, yet equally profound, the Minoan seal stones. These exquisitely crafted objects, often no larger than a thumb, are miniature windows into the heart of Minoan society, particularly those discovered in significant numbers at archaeological sites like Phaistos. They present us with a gentle enigma, a quiet puzzle from the distant past. Imagine, if you will, the earth-toned soil of an ancient excavation site. A careful brush sweeps away millennia of dust, revealing a small, smooth, polished stone. It might be made of steatite, agate, jasper, or even softer materials like ivory or bone. On its surface, intricately carved, is a tiny scene. Perhaps two figures, intertwined in what appears to be an embrace, or a single figure seemingly lost in contemplation. Are these fleeting glimpses of personal affection tokens of a quiet devotion or something more complex? Perhaps even records of the very scandals and intrigues that rippled through Minoan palaces? The enigma of these seal stones lies precisely in their ambiguous imagery. While many depict animals, mythological creatures, or ritualistic scenes, a significant number feature human figures and postures that suggest intimacy. They were used for practical purposes, to impress designs into wet clay to seal jars, doors, or documents, acting as a form of signature or authentication. But their artistic detail and the personal nature of some of their depictions suggest a deeper meaning. We see individuals holding hands, embracing, or engaged in what appeared to be close interactions. Were these merely artistic representations of abstract love, or were they personal objects, perhaps gifted between lovers, used to seal letters or mark personal possessions? Consider the context in which they were found. At Phaistos, a major Minoan palace site second only to Knossos, these seals were part of the daily life of the inhabitants. Let's explore the archaeological finds themselves. These small artifacts are typically pierced, indicating they were worn as pendants or on the wrist, perhaps as bracelets, always close to the body. This suggests a personal significance beyond mere administrative tools. Think of them as the ancient equivalent of a locket or a signet ring, something imbued with personal value and meaning. When a seal depicting a romantic scene is unearthed, the question naturally arises, was it a memento of affection, a secret token exchanged between individuals, or perhaps a more subtle, coded record of a liaison that could not be openly acknowledged? Delving into the cultural practices around Minoan art and ritual, we observe a society that embraced fluidity and natural forms in its artistic expression. Instead, we allow our minds to ponder the possibilities, to imagine the lives of the people who held these small stones, who pressed them into clay, and who perhaps carried them close to their hearts. Were they declarations of enduring love, or silent confessions of fleeting passion? The mystery of Minoan seal stones whispers of human connection across the millennia, a hypnotic echo of desires and relationships that continue to intrigue us, inviting our minds to gently drift through the currents of ancient life. Unlike some later, more rigid cultures, Minoan art often celebrated the human form and the beauty of nature with a remarkable sense of freedom. Imagine the intricate web of relationships within a palace, the alliances, the rivalries, and the inevitable passions. A discreetly carried seal stone, known only to a select few, could have been a silent testament to a secret agreement, a forbidden meeting, or a clandestine affection. The very ambiguity allows for this subtle interpretation. Frescoes depict individuals in motion, engaged in athletic feats or religious ceremonies, often with a striking lack of formal constraint. This suggests they were valuable objects, perhaps commissioned for special occasions or to commemorate significant personal events. The care taken in their creation speaks to their importance, whether as declarations of love, symbols of status, or silent keepers of secrets. This artistic sensibility might suggest that depictions of intimacy were simply a natural extension of their artistic vocabulary, rather than necessarily denoting explicit forbidden acts. However, it is also plausible that these scenes, particularly if found in private quarters or associated with specific individuals, served as discrete scandal records in a society where public image was crucial. The materials themselves also offer clues. Some seals are made of precious or semi-precious stones, requiring significant skill to carve. This segment invites us to simply wonder. We are not seeking definitive answers, for the past rarely yields such clarity, especially through objects as subtly evocative as these. Having explored the quiet fears of a servant and the mythical passions of a queen, and having pondered the intimate whispers of seal stones, let us now step with an unhurried pace into the very heart of Minoan power and luxury, the palace of a Minoan elite. The walls are not stark, unadorned stone, but a riot of color. The floors, often made of polished plaster or smooth stone, are cool beneath your feet. The elite did not labor in the fields or scrub floors. The air would be rich with the aroma of roasted meats, perhaps goat or wild boar, mingled with the sweet scent of figs and grapes. Large ceramic vessels would hold copious amounts of fish and wine, staples of the Minoan diet, brought fresh from the bountiful Aegean Sea and the fertile Cretan vineyards. Honeyed cakes and freshly baked bread would complete the spread. These were not just meals. They were social events, opportunities for display, for strengthening alliances, and for enjoying the abundant fruits of their flourishing civilization. The sounds would be a soft clinking of pottery, the murmur of conversation, perhaps the gentle strumming of a lyre or the reedy sound of a double flute, adding to the relaxed atmosphere. Their days were filled with different pursuits. Picture them gathering in grand halls, their voices a soft murmur as they discuss matters of trade and governance. They would wear finely woven linen garments, often dyed with vibrant colors like purple or saffron, adorned with delicate gold jewelry. You might notice large, elegant alabaster jars strategically placed, perhaps holding precious oils, aromatic herbs, or even fine wines. These are not merely decorative. They speak of wealth, of trade networks that stretched across the Aegean and beyond, bringing rare commodities to the Minoan elite. Frescoed walls surround you, depicting scenes that seem to pulse with life. You might see graceful dolphins leaping through azure waters, their forms rendered with fluid precision, or perhaps youthful figures in profile, engaged in solemn processions, their clothing exquisitely detailed. The Minoans had an extraordinary artistic sensibility, and their palaces were designed to be a constant feast for the eyes, reflecting a deep connection to nature and a celebration of human activity. The pigments, derived from minerals, still retain a remarkable intensity even after millennia. Imagine yourself not as a worker nor as a deity, but as a privileged guest, strolling through the expansive courtyards and richly appointed chambers of one of these magnificent structures, perhaps during the zenith of Minoan civilization, around 1500 BCE. The first thing that greets your senses upon entering is the sheer vibrancy of the space. As you move deeper into the palace, the air might carry the faint, pleasant scent of exotic wood and perhaps the subtle aroma of incense. Life within these palatial complexes was a carefully orchestrated symphony of leisure, ritual, and administration. And then there are the feasts. Imagine the central court perhaps transformed for a grand celebration. One of the most striking and enduring images associated with Minoan elite culture is the bull leaping ceremonies. While the exact nature of these rituals remains a subject of scholarly debate, the frescoes clearly depict daring young men from their palaces. The elite would oversee the flow of goods, olive oil, wine, pottery, textiles, and timber flowing out, and metals, precious stones, and exotic materials flowing in. The very beauty of the frescoes, the delicate craftsmanship of the artifacts, speak of a civilization at its peak, basking in its cultural splendor. The rhythms of the palace, the feasts, the ceremonies, all contribute to a sense of order and prosperity that seems almost timeless. Allow your mind to gently absorb these vivid details, to appreciate the quiet magnificence of a world that, though long past, still whispers its stories of opulence and intricate daily life. The storerooms beneath the palaces, with their rows of enormous pithoi, attest to the vast quantities of goods managed by the ruling class. Their wealth was not merely personal. It fueled the entire society, supporting artisans, administrators, and the very infrastructure of their sophisticated culture. And women grappling with powerful bulls, performing acrobatic feats over their backs. Imagine the controlled excitement, the focused energy, the blend of athletic prowess and ritualistic significance. This was not a bloody spectacle in the way some later cultures would practice bull sacrifice, but rather a display of courage, agility, and perhaps a deep spiritual connection to the powerful animal. These events would have drawn crowds, reinforcing the prestige and power of the elite who hosted and participated in them. The elite's role in trade was paramount. The Minoan civilization thrived on its maritime power, establishing extensive trade routes throughout the Mediterranean. Contrast this vibrant luxury with the precarious life of the servant we imagined earlier. While the servant's existence was one of constant labor, simple sustenance, and quiet apprehension, the elite lived a life of relative ease and abundance, surrounded by beauty and comfort. The servant's hands were calloused from scrubbing. The elite's hands might hold a delicate sealstone or a goblet of wine. The servant overheard whispers of scandal. The elite might be at the center of them, protected by their status. This stark contrast highlights the stratified nature of Minoan society, where the daily rhythms of life diverge dramatically based on one's position. Yet, even amidst this splendor, there is a gentle understanding that nothing lasts forever. As we gently drift through the rich tapestry of Minoan life, from the intimate secrets of individuals to the grand splendor of their palaces, let us now turn our attention to an event of monumental scale, a cataclysm that irrevocably altered the course of not just Minoan civilization, but the very landscape of the Aegean, the eruption of the Thera volcano. Thera, known today as Santorini, was once a single, much larger island, its volcano dormant for centuries. Life on the island, and indeed on nearby Crete, would have continued with its familiar rhythms, unaware of the immense pressures building deep beneath the Earth's surface. The sheer force of the explosion would have ripped the island apart, sending an immense column of ash, rock, and gas miles into the atmosphere. For those on Thera, the immediate impact would have been unimaginable, a searing, suffocating blast, followed by total darkness as the ash plume blocked out the sun. The air would have become thick with abrasive volcanic material, making breathing agonizing. Buildings would have crumbled under the weight of falling debris. While the precise date remains a subject of scientific debate, archaeological evidence places this colossal event sometime in the 17th or 16th century BCE, a seismic disruption that would have sent ripples of destruction across the sea. Imagine the serene blue of the Aegean Sea, usually a source of bounty and trade, now churning with an unnatural fury. The initial signs would have been subtle, perhaps a series of increasingly frequent and stronger earthquakes. The ground beneath the feet of the Minoans would have trembled, buildings might have swayed, and cracks could have appeared in their meticulously constructed walls. These tremors, initially unnerving, might have eventually become a terrifying constant, disrupting sleep and sowing a quiet anxiety. Imagine the fear, the confusion, as the very earth beneath you seemed to rebel. Then the true horror began. The eruption itself was catastrophic, one of the largest volcanic events in human history. But the reach of Thera's fury extended far beyond its immediate vicinity. The collapse of the volcanic cone created an enormous tsunami, a series of towering waves that would have radiated outwards across the Aegean. While not as immediately destructive as the tsunami, the ash would have had long-term consequences. It would have suffocated crops, poisoned water sources, and rendered fertile land barren for years, perhaps even decades. Imagine the slow, creeping dread as the food supply dwindled, as the very ground that sustained them became infertile, adding the specter of famine to the immediate destruction. It offers a stark contrast to the human-centric dramas we have explored previously, reminding us that there are forces far greater than human desires or political intrigues. The eruption of Thera, though an act of nature, profoundly shaped the human history of the Aegean, leading to a period of decline for the Minoans and setting the stage for new powers to emerge. As we contemplate the silent, enduring impact of this ancient catastrophe, allow your mind to gently consider the vastness of time and the humbling power of the earth. Picture the horror as the sea, usually a calm friend, transformed into an unstoppable destroyer. Survivors would have faced widespread destruction, the collapse of infrastructure, and a drastically altered environment. The disruption to trade routes, already crippled by the loss of ships and harbors, would have severed vital connections to the wider world, isolating the Minoan economy. While the eruption did not directly destroy the Minoan civilization in a single blow, archaeological evidence suggests some recovery and continuation of life. It undoubtedly dealt a crippling blow. Along the northern coast of Crete, approximately 70 miles south, these colossal waves would have crashed ashore with unimaginable force, sweeping inland, obliterating coastal settlements, and devastating harbors and fleets. The once bustling port towns, vital to Minoan trade and prosperity, would have been reduced to wreckage, their ships, the lifeblood of the empire, smashed and sunk. The impact of the ashfall was also devastating. Carried by prevailing winds, a thick blanket of volcanic ash would have settled over parts of Crete. The immediate aftermath on Crete would have been one of profound disarray and loss. The once thriving palaces, though many survived the initial impact, would have been profoundly affected by the economic and social turmoil. The resources needed for grand feasts and elaborate ceremonies would have become scarce. The confidence and stability that underpinned their complex society would have been shaken to its core. This catastrophic event serves as a somber reminder of the fragility of even the most advanced civilizations in the face of nature. Immense power. As the dust of Thera's colossal eruption slowly settled over the Aegean, altering the very air and earth, a new power was quietly, yet steadily, rising on the mainland of Greece. Where once Minoan ships, with their distinctive hull shapes and painted sails, dominated the waves, Mycenaean vessels, sturdy and purposeful, began to make their presence felt. The loss of vital trading posts, the disruption of agricultural production due to ashfall, and the shattering of their naval supremacy would have severely weakened their economic and political structure. As the Minoan grip on the Aegean began to loosen, the Mycenaeans, observing from the mainland, saw an opportunity. The Mycenaeans were a Bronze Age Greek-speaking people, dwelling in heavily fortified citadels like Messene, Tiryns, and Pylos. Unlike the open and seemingly undefended Minoan palaces, Mycenaean strongholds were built for defense, their massive Cyclopean walls speaking to a different ethos, one of warfare and territorial control. For centuries, the Minoans had reigned supreme, their thalassocracy, their mastery of the seas, unmatched. But the world was shifting, and the vacuum left by the environmental and economic shocks to Crete would gradually be filled by a more militaristic, yet culturally indebted civilization, the Mycenaeans. Imagine now the gradual shift in the maritime currents. The Minoan decline, while accelerated by the Thera eruption, was likely a complex process, not a singular sudden collapse. Initially, the relationship between the Minoans and Mycenaeans might have been one of cultural exchange and even admiration. Mycenaean art and architecture show clear Minoan influence. They adopted the Minoan script Linear A, adapting it to their own Greek language to create Linear B. They embrace Minoan artistic motifs, the bull, the double axe, the intricate frescoes, incorporating them into their own distinct style, albeit often with a more rigid, formal quality. Imagine Mycenaean artisans learning techniques from their Minoan counterparts, admiring their vibrant colors and fluid lines, even as their own societies developed along different paths. However, as Minoan power waned, the nature of this relationship began to shift. The Mycenaeans, with their more organized military structure and their fortified strongholds, were well positioned to capitalize on Minoan vulnerabilities. Their graves contain bronze weapons, swords, spears, daggers, indicating a society that valued martial prowess. By around 1450 BCE, many of the major Minoan palaces on Crete, including Knossos, show signs of destruction, though the cause is debated. Perhaps internal strife, or more likely, direct Mycenaean conquest. Following this period, Knossos itself seems to have been reoccupied by Mycenaeans, as evidenced by the discovery of Linear B tablets in the palace archives. The Minoans, even in their decline, left an indelible mark on the developing Greek world, a rich foundation upon which new empires and myths would be built. As we contemplate this grand historical transition, allow your mind to gently consider the ebb and flow of power, the subtle ways in which one civilization gives way to another, and the enduring echoes of those who once held sway. These tablets, unlike the still undeciphered Linear A, reveal a highly centralized administration, quite different from what we understand of earlier Minoan systems. Their narratives, passed down through later Greek epics, are filled with heroes and battles. The vibrant, artistic, and seemingly less militaristic Minoan civilization slowly faded into the background, its legacy absorbed and transformed by its more bellicose successors. The intricate frescoes of Crete began to share their space with the martial motifs of mainland Greece. The open, flowing architecture of Minoan palaces gave way to the formidable walls of Mycenaean citadels. It is not difficult to imagine a scenario where Mycenaean chieftains, seeing a weakened Crete, began to exert their influence through force, establishing garrisons, taking over administrative centers, and eventually effectively absorbing the remnants of Minoan power. We begin to see archaeological evidence of a Mycenaean presence on Crete itself. This might have initially been through trade, then perhaps through gradual settlement, and eventually through more direct political and military intervention. Consider the nature of Mycenaean expansion. Unlike the Minoans, whose influence spread largely through trade and cultural diffusion, the Mycenaeans were formidable warriors. The ultimate end of Minoan dominance is not marked by a single dramatic battle, but by a gradual transition of power. This period marks a profound shift in the political and cultural landscape of the Aegean. The story of the Mycenaean ascendancy and the end of Minoan dominance is not a tale of brutal conquest alone, but also one of cultural inheritance and transformation. Imagine yourself in a city of perfect order, where every brick was precisely laid and every drain flowed with purpose. Now, imagine your own life within those very walls felt like dust under a sandal. Tonight, we gently uncover the unseen, struggles and quiet hardships of those who served in the sophisticated, yet unforgiving world of 2500 BCE Mohenjo-Daro. Imagine yourself in the sprawling, meticulously planned city of Mohenjo-Daro around 2500 BCE. The morning sun, already high, beats down with an intense, dry heat, warming the very air you breathe. You are a bondservant, an unseen cog in the intricate machinery of a prosperous merchant's household. The city around you, built with uniform baked bricks, is a marvel of ancient urban planning. But for you, it is simply the backdrop to a life of ceaseless, intimate labor. Your feet, bare or clad in simple sandals, already burn on the hot streets as you move between the merchant's compound and the city's wells. The sun has absorbed the warmth of the day, and the very ground beneath you radiates a dry heat that permeates through your solace, a constant low-level discomfort. The air is thick with the scent of dry earth, cooking fires, and the faint, sweet smell of spices from a nearby market stall. Your meals are simple, functional, designed for sustenance, not indulgence. You might be given a bowl of boiled lentils, perhaps mixed with some coarse barley flour, a small portion that nonetheless provides the energy needed for the day's demanding tasks. The taste is earthy, plain, a stark contrast to the richer fare. Served within the inner courtyards of your master's home, you eat quickly, often alone, perched on a low stool or the edge of a well, the quiet sounds of the city's awakening life passing by unnoticed. Your days are structured by a relentless series of duties, each demanding a physical toll. You might spend hours in the central courtyard, carefully cleaning the mosaic floors or sweeping away the fine dust that constantly settles from the dry air. The rough texture of a brush against the baked bricks, the rhythmic swish of sweeping, the persistent ache in your back as you bend and stoop. These are the familiar sensations of your existence. You carry heavy clay jars of water from the communal wells, the cool liquid sloshing gently against the sides as you walk, the weight pulling at your shoulders. You might be tasked with grinding grains using a heavy stone quern, the repetitive motion tiring your arms, the fine dust from the flour coating your clothes and skin. You are bound to intimate labor. Meeting your duties often bring you into close contact with the daily lives of your masters, yet always from a position of service. You might arrange their fine pottery, fan them during the oppressive heat of midday, or assist with their dressing. You hear the intimate conversations, witness the familial dynamics, yet you remain largely unnoticed, a silent presence. This proximity to the lives of the elite, combined with your own social invisibility, can create a subtle internal strain. You exist at the periphery, privy to the comforts you cannot enjoy. The weight of social invisibility is a constant, unspoken burden. You are not a recognized citizen, you hold no property, and your voice, should you attempt to raise it, holds little sway. Your identity is largely defined by your service. When a group of merchants passes by in the street, engaged and animated discussion, their fine linen robes rustling softly, you instinctively step aside, almost fading into the shadows of the narrow alleyways. You are a part of the bustling city, yet simultaneously detached from its vibrant core, and always underlying every task, every interaction, is the quiet, ever-present fear of displeasing masters. A dropped jar, a task not completed to their exacting standards, a perceived disrespect. Any minor infraction could lead to harsh consequences. While the exact nature of discipline varied, the threat of a beating, reduced rations, or increased workload would have been a palpable anxiety. You learn to move with quiet efficiency, to anticipate needs, and to maintain an impassive demeanor, striving always to blend into the background, to avoid drawing attention. This constant vigilance, this need to be ever aware of your masters' moods and expectations, adds another layer of mental exhaustion to your physical fatigue. This is the quiet, challenging rhythm of life as an Indus Valley bondservant. It is a life shaped by the rigid hierarchy of an advanced society, by relentless toil, and by the subtle, yet profound, struggle for mere existence and quiet survival, far removed from the grandeur of the city's public life. As the quiet hum of the bondservant's ceaseless labor gently fades, let us now shift our perspective from the unseen periphery to the bustling heart of Harappan commerce, and consider the plausible, yet perhaps tragic, narrative of a Harappan merchant whose fortunes turned. Possibly around 2300 BC, I imagine a man who once navigated the intricate networks of trade, whose wealth brought him influence, only to find himself entangled in a web of betrayal that would lead to his ruin. Picture this merchant, perhaps named Pavitra, as he once was, a figure of quiet importance within the big brick city of Mohenjo-daro. His compound, a testament to his success, would have been larger than most, with private courtyards and perhaps even a dedicated workshop for his goods. The air within would often carry the scent of exotic materials, rare woods, semi-precious stones, and the rich, earthy smell of packaged grains destined for distant lands. His days would be filled with negotiations, the careful counting of goods, and the planning of intricate trade expeditions. Pavitra's wealth, like that of many Harappan merchants, was built upon an extensive network of trade with Mesopotamia. Imagine the long, arduous journeys, caravans laden with goods moving through dusty plains, or sturdy boats navigating the rivers and coastal waters of the Persian Gulf. From the Indus Valley, Pavitra would have dispatched precious timbers like teak, fine cotton textiles, carnelian beads, and even specialized crafts unique to Harappan artisans. In return, his ships or caravans would bring back valuable commodities from Mesopotamia, perhaps lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, gold, silver, and other finished goods that appealed to the Harappan elite. The quiet clinking of clay tablets used for record keeping in Mesopotamia would have been a familiar sound during his negotiations in far-off Ur or Sumer. Central to Pavitra's operations, like many affluent households and businesses in Harappan society, was his reliance on bondservants and other forms of controlled labor. These individuals performed the arduous, hands-on tasks that fueled his trade, packing goods, maintaining his compound, preparing food for his extensive household, and serving his needs. While he may have seen them merely as necessary components of his enterprise, their intimate knowledge of his household, his routines, and perhaps even his vulnerabilities became a silent, unseen risk. The very presence of these bondservants, often overlooked, could become a potential conduit for information, a quiet channel for discontent or manipulation. Now, imagine the subtle shift in the air, the quiet beginnings of his downfall. Perhaps a rival merchant, envious of Pavitra's success or seeking to expand their own influence, began to sow seeds of discord. The close-knit, yet competitive, world of Harappan commerce meant that alliances were constantly shifting. A competitor might spread rumors, subtly undermine Pavitra's reputation among his contacts, or even interfere with his trade routes. The decisive blow in this plausible narrative came from within, a betrayal orchestrated perhaps by a disaffected bondservant, or more likely by rivals who cunningly exploited Pavitra's reliance on his unfree labor. Information about his shipments, his vulnerabilities, or even the layout of his compound could be leaked for a price, or perhaps coerced through threats. Imagine a bondservant feeling the weight of their own harsh existence, being quietly approached with an offer of freedom or a meager sum, enough to ignite a spark of hope. The details of the betrayal would be subtle. A crucial piece of information about an unguarded shipment whispered to a rival, a door left unlatched, a carefully forged document passed to an unsuspecting contact. The ruin by rivals would not be a sudden, violent confrontation, but a slow, methodical unraveling of his network. Shipments might disappear, key contacts might mysteriously sever ties, and his reputation, once unblemished, would gradually become tainted by rumors of unreliability or misfortune. His wealth, once flowing freely, would begin to dwindle, the stacks of seals and weights in his counting room diminishing day by day. The fall of Pavitra, the once successful merchant, would serve as a quiet yet profound cautionary tale within Harappan society. It underscores the precariousness of even great wealth in a time before sophisticated legal protections, where reputation and trust were fragile commodities. It speaks to the hidden vulnerabilities within seemingly powerful structures and how even those deemed socially invisible could, in unexpected ways, play a role in the grander dramas of their time. This tale of ambition, reliance on unseen labor, and eventual betrayal, delivered in a soothing tone, invites you to contemplate the quiet complexities of ancient commerce and the enduring human frailties that transcend time. As the silent drama of the fallen merchant fades into the ancient dust, let us now turn our quiet attention to one of the most intriguing and enduring enigmas of the Indus Valley: civilization, the countless terracotta figurines discovered within. Their cities, particularly those that spark questions about the very individuals we just explored, the Bondservants. These small, often hand-molded objects offer a tantalizing, yet ambiguous, glimpse into the spiritual and daily lives of a society whose written script remains largely unreadable. Imagine the methodical work of an archaeologist, gently brushing away layers of earth from a dig site in a Harappan city. Suddenly, a small, reddish-brown form emerges, a figurine perhaps only a few inches tall, crafted from baked clay. There are thousands of these, depicting a wide variety of subjects, animals, human forms, and sometimes figures adorned with elaborate headdresses or engaged in what appear to be ritualistic postures. Among these, some capture our particular curiosity, for they seem to represent individuals in various states of dress or perhaps even bondage. The central enigma of these terracotta figurines lies in their precise purpose and meaning. Were they merely children's toys, simple representations of daily life? Or did they hold a deeper, more profound significance, perhaps serving as religious or domestic symbols? Some theories suggest they were votive offerings placed in homes or temples to invoke blessings or protection. Others propose they were part of household rituals, representations of deities, ancestors, or even protective spirits. Consider the possibility that some of these figurines, particularly those with less elaborate adornment or in more passive postures, might indeed be depicting bondservants in ritual roles. In many ancient societies, unfree labor was often integrated into religious practices. They might have performed menial tasks within temples, assisted in sacrificial ceremonies, or even served as symbolic offerings themselves. Could these figurines represent such individuals, perhaps ritually pure, designated for specific, intimate roles within the religious framework of a household or a community? The very anonymity of many of the figurines, their simple, unadorned forms, could lend itself to this interpretation, representing a class of people whose individual identities were less emphasized. Delving into the archaeological finds themselves, we observe a remarkable consistency in the artistic style across vast distances within the Indus Valley, suggesting a shared cultural understanding. The figurines are generally well preserved due to the durable nature of baked clay. Their widespread distribution, found in almost every household and public building excavated, indicates their pervasive presence in Harappan life. Imagine a small figurine tucked into a niche in a simple home, or arrayed on a shelf in a more elaborate dwelling. These finds contribute to our understanding of the texture of everyday life, suggesting a society deeply intertwined with symbolic representation, exploring the cultural practices around urban life. In the Indus Valley deepens our contemplation of these objects. We know the Harappans were meticulous urban planners with advanced drainage systems, public baths, and well-organized streets. This level of societal organization often implies a corresponding order in religious and social practices. The figurines, therefore, might be seen as part of this broader structure, serving a specific function within the household or public sphere. Their presence in what appear to be domestic contexts suggests an intimate connection to family life and personal piety. The fact that the Indus script remains undeciphered adds another layer to this mystery. Without written records to accompany these figurines, we are left to interpret their meaning solely through visual clues and comparative anthropology. This limitation, however, also sparks a profound sense of curiosity. We are forced to engage our imagination, to quietly speculate about the beliefs and practices of a society that communicated its most profound ideas not through words we can read, but through symbols we can only interpret. This segment invites a quiet reflection, a gentle journey into the heart of a civilization that whispers its secrets through art rather than text. We are not seeking definitive answers, for the past rarely yields such clarity, especially from a scriptless society. Instead, we allow our minds to ponder the possibilities, to imagine the hands that molded these small figures and the beliefs they embodied. Were they silent tributes, humble prayers, or quiet representations of lives lived in servitude? The mystery of Indus Valley figurines continues to intrigue us, inviting our minds to gently drift through the unspoken narratives of ancient urban life. As we gently transition from the enigmatic terracotta figurines that hint at the unseen lives of bondservants, let us now step with measured calm into a different realm of Harappan society, the orderly luxury of a priest's compound. Imagine yourself in the heart of Mohenjo-daro, or perhaps Harappa, in a structure designed not for commerce or defense, but for administration, ritual, and a quiet, structured existence reflecting the unique authority of the Harappan priestly class. Picture a substantial brick compound, meticulously constructed with the characteristic baked bricks that define Indus Valley architecture. The walls are thick, providing insulation from the intense sun, and the courtyards within would be clean, swept, and perhaps adorned with simple yet elegant pottery. The air here would feel different, perhaps tinged with a faint, lingering scent of burnt incense or the earthy aroma of stored grains, a subtle testament to the compound's dual role in both spiritual and logistical matters. Within such a compound, one might find a series of interconnected rooms, some dedicated to living quarters, others to administrative tasks, and crucially, some to storage. The presence of large granaries adjacent to, or even within, these compounds speaks volumes. These massive structures, designed for efficient storage of grains like wheat and barley, suggest that the priestly class likely played a central role in the collection, redistribution, and management of the city's agricultural surplus. Imagine the silent, orderly rows of grain sacks, representing the sustenance of the entire urban population, managed under their quiet oversight. Central to the life and authority of the priest would have been the ritual baths. The most famous example, the Great Bath at Mohenjo-daro, is a monumental structure, a testament to the Harappan reverence for purification rituals. Imagine its pristine, well-maintained basin, the gentle murmur of water as it was filled and drained. Within a priest's private compound, there would likely be smaller, yet equally significant, bathing facilities, perhaps for personal purification or for more intimate rituals. The cool, clean feel of the water, the quiet solemnity of the act of bathing, these would be integral parts of the priest's daily routine, symbolizing purity and connection to the sacred. Meals within a priest's compound, while perhaps not extravagant in the same way as a merchant's feast, would be abundant and balanced. Imagine a table laid with simple yet nourishing fare, fresh fish from the Indus River, perhaps smoked or dried, providing essential protein. Alongside it, generous portions of boiled barley or wheat, ground into a coarse flour and baked into flatbreads. The addition of lentils, vegetables grown in communal gardens, and perhaps even some wild game or fruit would complete the diet. The meals would be taken in a calm, orderly fashion, reflecting the structured nature of their lives. Life of a Harappan priest was not merely one of contemplation and ritual. It was deeply intertwined with the city governance. While the exact political structure of the Indus Valley civilization remains a mystery, there's no evidence of kings or emperors in the Mesopotamian or Egyptian sense. Archaeological evidence suggests a highly organized society. The remarkable uniformity of city planning, weights and measures, and even pottery styles across vast regions points to a strong, centralized authority. Many scholars believe this authority may have been wielded by a powerful priestly class, acting as civic administrators rather than purely spiritual leaders. Imagine the priest, not in a ceremonial robe, but perhaps in a simple, clean linen garment, overseeing the distribution of grain, mediating disputes, or ensuring the maintenance of the city's complex drainage system. His days would involve quietly inspecting public works, ensuring the smooth functioning of urban life, and perhaps consulting on trade matters. His authority would derive from both his spiritual role and his practical administrative capabilities. The sounds of his day would be the soft rustle of his robes, the quiet consultations with scribes, if their script was for administrative purposes, and the distant hum of the city he helped to manage. This offers a profound contrast to the bondservants. Hardship we explored earlier. While the bondservants' feet burned on hot streets and their lives were defined by endless physical toil and social invisibility, the priest operated from a position of quiet power and orderly comfort. The bondservants' meals were minimal. The priests were ample and assured. The bondservant feared displeasure. The priest wielded authority, albeit perhaps a benevolent one. This disparity highlights Harappan urban life as a stratified, yet remarkably organized society, where different classes played distinct and essential roles in maintaining its sophisticated urban existence. As we contemplate this structured existence, allow your mind to gently absorb these images of order and quiet influence, reflecting on the unique character of power in the ancient Indus Valley. As we gently step away from the ordered compounds of the Harappan priests, let us now contemplate one of the greatest mysteries of ancient history, the gradual, yet ultimately profound, decline of the Indus Valley civilization. Imagine the bustling cities, once so meticulously planned and thriving, slowly quieting, their vibrant life ebbing away over centuries, leaving behind only the enigmatic ruins we explore today. This was not a sudden, cataclysmic collapse, but a drawn-out process, a complex interplay of various factors that led to the eventual disappearance of one of the world's earliest great urban cultures, the peak of the Indus Valley civilization, marked by its impressive cities like Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, stretched from roughly 2600 to 1900 BCE. But by around 1800 BCE, clear signs of decline begin to appear in the archaeological record. What caused this slow fading? The answer is not simple, and scholars continue to debate the relative importance of several contributing factors. One of the most widely considered theories points to environmental changes, particularly shifts in the powerful Indus River system. Imagine the river, the very lifeblood of the civilization, gradually changing its course. The Indus and its tributaries, fed by Himalayan snowmold, were crucial for irrigation, for transportation, and for providing fertile silt for agriculture. A major shift in the river's course, perhaps due to tectonic activity or a prolonged drought, could have left vast tracts of once fertile land parched and rendered vital cities inaccessible to water and trade. Imagine the slow, creeping dread as Once reliable water sources dwindled as crops withered in the fields, and as the life-giving river moved further and further away, leaving behind dusty, abandoned riverbeds. Related to this are theories of climate change. Paleoclimate studies suggest a period of increased aridity and prolonged droughts in the region around the time of the Indus Valley's decline. This would have placed immense stress on the agricultural base that supported the large urban populations. Imagine the struggle to feed vast numbers of people when harvests consistently failed, when livestock perished from lack of water and fodder. This environmental pressure would have forced people to migrate, abandoning cities for areas where survival was more feasible. Another contributing factor might have been repeated flooding. While the Indus River was essential, its floods could also be devastating. Evidence from Mohenjo-daro suggests multiple layers of silt and debris, indicating repeated major flooding events. Imagine the laborious process of rebuilding after each inundation, clearing houses, repairing infrastructure, and recovering from lost harvests. Over time, the cumulative impact of such destructive floods could have simply become unsustainable, exhausting resources and manpower, eventually leading to abandonment. Beyond environmental factors, internal stressors may have played a role. While the Indus cities appear remarkably orderly and peaceful, with little evidence of large-scale warfare, there might have been internal socio-political issues, perhaps. A decline in the effectiveness of the central authority that managed the complex urban systems, the granaries, the drainage, the standardized weights and measures. Imagine the subtle unraveling of a highly organized society when its leadership becomes less effective, when public works fall into disrepair, and when resources are no longer equitably managed. This could have led to a loss of trust and a gradual fragmentation of the urban centers. It is important to note that theories of external invasion, particularly by migrating Indo-Aryan groups, once popular, are now largely discounted as the primary cause of the civilization's collapse. The decline was far more gradual and multifaceted than a sudden military overthrow. The consequences of this decline were profound. The great cities like Mohenjo-daro and Harappa were eventually abandoned. Their sophisticated urban planning, their unique script, and their distinctive art faded from memory for millennia. The people did not simply vanish. They dispersed, likely moving to smaller, more rural settlements, adapting their ways of life to changing environmental conditions. The complex urban civilization fragmented into smaller, regional cultures. This segment offers a quiet reflection on the impermanence of even the most advanced human endeavors when faced with the relentless forces of nature and the subtle erosion of internal stability. The decline of the Indus Valley civilization is not a tale of dramatic collapse, but a poignant story of slow transformation, inviting our minds to gently consider the fragile balance between human ingenuity and environmental realities. As the theories surrounding the gradual decline of the Indus Valley civilization gently settle in our thoughts, let us now shift our focus to something enduring, something truly remarkable that sets this ancient culture apart: its unparalleled urban planning and infrastructure. Imagine, even as cities like Mohenjo-daro and Harappa faced their eventual abandonment, the underlying principles of their design continued to whisper lessons of foresight and communal organization that resonate even today. Stepping into an Indus Valley city, even in our imagination, is to enter a world of astonishing order. Unlike the organic, often chaotic growth of many ancient settlements, Harappan cities were meticulously laid out, almost as if designed by a single guiding hand. Picture straight, wide streets, often running in a precise grid pattern, oriented along cardinal directions. This systematic layout allowed for efficient movement of people and goods, and also played a role in managing airflow and sunlight, a testament to their understanding of urban comfort. Imagine the subtle satisfaction of walking down such a planned thoroughfare, each step predictable and unhurried. Perhaps the most astonishing aspect of their urbanism was the sophisticated drainage and sanitation systems. Beneath the streets, concealed by baked bricks, ran intricate networks of covered drains. Every house, even the most modest, had access to fresh water and boasted its own bathroom, with wastewater flowing into these communal drains. Imagine the efficiency, the relative cleanliness compared to other ancient cities of the time. The scent of clean water, perhaps the faint, earthy smell of wet brick, would have been common. This commitment to public health and hygiene speaks volumes about the societal values of the Harapans. It was a clear prioritization of the well-being of the collective, a stark contrast to the sporadic or non-existent sanitation in many contemporary urban centers. At the heart of many cities stood a raised area, often referred to as the citadel. This was not necessarily a fortified defensive structure in the traditional sense, but rather a platform housing important public buildings. Here, one might find the Great Bath at Mohenjo-daro, a large, carefully constructed tank with waterproof walls, used for ritual bathing or communal purification. Imagine the quiet solemnity of such a place, the reflective surface of the water, the hushed sounds of people participating in ceremonies. Beside it often stood the large granaries, which we touched upon earlier, further emphasizing the centralized control over food resources vital for sustaining a large urban population. The Harapans also demonstrated remarkable standardization in their construction. The baked bricks used throughout their cities were consistently of a uniform size and proportion, a level of precision that required careful planning and quality control. Imagine the consistent feel of these well-made bricks, the evenness of the walls, contributing to the overall sense of durability and permanence that permeates their ruins. This standardization extended to weights and measures, used for trade and taxation, indicating a highly regulated economic system. This meticulous approach to urban planning had a profound impact on daily life. It contributed to a sense of order, and perhaps a degree of public health unknown in many other ancient societies. The planned layout would have facilitated efficient commerce and social interaction. While we might focus on the hardship of the bondservant, even their existence was within a framework of remarkable urban design, a testament to a collective will to create functional and sustainable living environments. The legacy of this urban foresight extends far beyond their immediate period. While their cities ultimately faded, the very idea of planned urban centers with public services like sanitation is a concept that echoes through architectural and planning history. They were pioneers in understanding how to manage large populations within a built environment, a quiet testament to their sophisticated civilization. As we contemplate the enduring design principles of the Indus Valley, allow your mind to gently consider the long reach of innovation and the subtle ways in which the past continues to inform the present, even when its direct lineage is lost to time. The Indus Valley people, with their quiet ingenuity, their sophisticated trade networks, and their mysterious script, left behind a legacy of remarkable order and structured living. Their world, largely devoid of the grand monuments and overt martial displays seen in other ancient empires, speaks to a unique cultural emphasis on functionality, cleanliness, and perhaps communal harmony and centralized administration. May the serene mysteries of the Indus Valley guide your thoughts to a place of tranquility. Let the images of orderly brickwork, the scent of ancient spices, and the quiet flow of a long-lost river lull your mind into a state of deep relaxation. You are safe, you are warm, and the echoes of the past are here only to provide comfort. As the last lingering thoughts of ancient Harappan life dissolve, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful slumber, knowing that the tapestry of history continues to unfold, waiting patiently for another gentle exploration. Good night.